Arcadian Vanguard presents the Wrestling News in your daily wrestling newscast for Friday, November 10th, 2023. Good morning. I'm Mike Sempervive. We begin today with WWE Financial news. The ownership structure of WWE is expected to be changing soon as Vince McMahon intends to sell off approximately one-third of his stock in TKO, the company comprised of WWE and UFC, according to an official press release yesterday. McMahon plans to sell off 8.4 million shares of TKO stock currently valued at approximately $713 million. McMahon would receive all proceeds from the sale, with Endeavor Group, TKO's parent company, purchasing $100 million worth of the stock for sale. Endeavor CEO Ari Emanuel has also indicated interest in buying $1 million worth of McMahon stock. Other unnamed company directors are also interested in purchasing $850,000 worth. The 8.4 million shares make up nearly one-third of the 28 million shares McMahon currently owns and would reduce his ownership stake in the company to a little over 10%. Ring of Honor streamed on Honor Club last night, featuring matches taped last Saturday night at the Intrust Center in Wichita, Kansas. ROH World Champion Eddie Kingston made the fifth defense of his title, putting down the challenge of former champion Dalton Castle. Castle's boys also defeated the Bollywood Boys in a tag team match on the show. In the main event, AAA Mega Champion El Hijo del Vikingo teamed with Commander to defeat Christopher Daniels and Matt Sydal. In other selected results, Trent Beretta beat Peter Avalon and Emi Sakura beat Rebel Kell. In ratings news, last Wednesday night's episode of AEW Dynamite drew 804,000 viewers to TBS, according to WrestleNomics. That's a drop of 3% from last week's audience of 832,000. In the key 18 to 49-year-old demographic, the show drew a rating of .27, down slightly from last week's .28 key demo rating. Impact Wrestling aired last night on Access TV, featuring matches taped October 22nd at Cicero Stadium in Cicero, Illinois. In the main event, Alex Shelley topped Jonathan Gresham to retain the Impact World Championship. Tommy Dreamer retained the digital media title with a win over Crazy Steve. In other selected results, Eric Young beat Eddie Edwards, Brian Myers defeated Joe Hendry, and Tasha Steelz topped Deonna Purrazzo. In news from outside the ring, The Iron Claw, the motion picture based on the rise and fall of the Von Erich wrestling family, held its official premiere Wednesday night at the Texas Theater in Dallas. Among those in attendance were Kevin Von Erich and his sons Marshall and Ross, as well as the family of the late Kerry Von Erich. Trish Stratus was also among those on hand. The stars and crew of the movie were also there, including writer-director Sean Durkin, Jeremy Allen White, Harris Dickinson, Stanley Simons, and Zac Efron, who stars as Kevin Von Erich. Released by A24, The Iron Claw goes into wide release on December 22nd. And in more AEW news, The Bunny, real name Laura Dennis, has parted ways with the company, according to PW Insider. No other information was provided on her departure. The Bunny had been with AEW since June of 2019. She has not wrestled since the September 6th episode of Dynamite. She had previously wrestled for TNA Impact and was a two-time Knockouts World Champion. And before we leave you today, we'd like to remind you that however you consume your content, you can find the wrestling news 24 hours a day and 7 days a week across social media. On Twitter, follow us at Wrestling News AV. Our Facebook page is also Wrestling News AV. The Wrestling News can also be found on the Arcadian Vanguard YouTube page. And for those who utilize Amazon Echo devices, just tell Alexa to play the Wrestling News podcast. And remember to make sure you add podcast at the end. Once again, for daily updates, breaking news, and more, follow the Wrestling News across social media. And that's the news for today. If anything happens, we will be here to tell you about it. No clickbait, no paywall, just the Wrestling News. The Wrestling News is a division of Arcadian Vanguard, and the Wrestling Newscast is a production of the Arcadian Vanguard Podcast Network.